Good afternoon and welcome to the University of South Australia. I'm delighted that you could join us this afternoon for another successful ageing seminar. My name is Emily O'Brien and I'm the Advancement Executive at UniSA, and it's my privilege to be your MC today. We begin, as we always do, by acknowledging that the land that we meet on this afternoon is these traditional lands of the Kaurna people. We respect their spiritual relationship with their country and pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. I would also like to take this opportunity to acknowledge members of our Chancellors Club and Hetzel Group who are in our audience today. So, firstly, I'll start with some items of housekeeping. Toilets are located on either side of the bottom entrance of the lecture theatre. Males to turn left, females to turn right. If you have a mobile phone, can you please make sure to either turn it off or switch it to silent mode? If you could, that would be great. And then in the event of an emergency evacuation, which we hope is very unlikely, note where your nearest exit is and follow the instructions of staff who will guide you to the evacuation assembly point. And please note, finally, that there will be no breaks during the presentation. So now on to today's seminar, which discusses how you can eat your way to 100. So we're delighted to have Dr Evangeline Mantzioris as our guest speaker today. She'll be exploring the science behind diet and longevity, foods to eat, those to avoid, and how to support healthy ageing. She'll speak about brain-boosting antioxidants, anti-inflammatory nutrients, and gut-friendly fibres. And today we'll learn how simple dietary choices can keep you feeling strong, prevent disease, and promote a healthier, longer life. So please welcome me in joining Dr Evangeline Mantzioris.
Thank you, Emily. It's not often you get to be introduced by two people, so I also thank the little one. It's lovely to see so many of you here, particularly on a rainy day and especially after lunch. So hopefully I don't make you feel too ill about what you might have had for lunch. Just to introduce myself a little, I am the Program Director of Nutrition and Food Sciences here at the University of South Australia. And I'm also an accredited dietitian and an accredited sports dietitian as well. And not to give away my age, but I've been in the area close to 40 years now. So it's been a long career in this space of nutrition. So, eating your way to 100. Now, many of you might go, oh, 100 seems a little bit too old. I don't want to get to 100. But I think what we all want is to live to the end as healthily as possible. And so that's what the focus is going to be. First, I want to talk to you a little bit about science. Because one of the big misconceptions about nutrition is that it's not a science. And when we get our students coming into the degree, they are often surprised they have to learn things like chemistry and biology. And that is because nutrition is a science. It's essentially how chemicals are acting in your body to impact on your health. So, you are made up entirely of all the foods you've ever consumed. And that makes it a little bit more scary, doesn't it? So people often think that science is overwhelmingly complex and that you need a formal education to fully understand it. But science is simply the systematic process that we use to understand the natural world around us. And we use observation, we use experiments, we analyse, and then we use evidence to test and to refine potential explanations so that the information that we give to the public about health is accurate. Okay? We don't want to give you bogus treatments that cost you a lot of money and have no impact on your health. And so this is a really important thing. It might be easier, perhaps, if I describe to you what science isn't. Science is not what your mother tells you. Yep. Science is not what your grandma tells you either. It's not what your neighbours tell you. Exactly. I don't know that I'd call him a celebrity, but I guess he's famous, but it's certainly not what celebrities tell you either. It's not what food companies tell you. It's not what you're told on Facebook. And neither is it a personal anecdote or a testimonial. And I think most of you would have heard about Belle Gibson by now. The story's come out again with the Netflix series Apple Cider Vinegar. But in short, she claimed she had an incurable cancer, well, stage 4 cancer, and that she cured herself simply by healthy eating and not taking any medications. You go, well, the harm in this is that many people did stop taking treatments. Okay? So, the other thing is science doesn't care how you feel about things. Okay? I could quite convincingly provide you with evidence to suggest, and I should disclose to begin with that my background is Greek, that if you eat a baklava every day, it would be healthy for you. And I would love to believe in that, right? And many of you would too, but it's simply not the case. And so that is the really important thing. So when we do talk about science and evidence, we use what we call this evidence base of studies, of science. And at the bottom, we have what we call non-human studies, studies in animals or in cells. These are useful for us to determine biochemical pathways of how nutrients may act in your body. After that, and what it does is give us clues about what we can look at in humans. And then we have those human studies, which we call observational, where we just watch people, we don't intervene, and we see what happens to groups of population that eat foods in certain ways. But that still doesn't tell us that there is a link between the two. Okay? It just tells us there might be something in it that's worth looking at. And that's when we go to intervention studies, where we actually intervene, make changes, and see what the effects are. Now, when you hear media reports, you may often hear them talking about observational studies, where they might say chocolate is linked to more Nobel Prizes in countries, right? It's just saying that in this country, where they eat lots of chocolate, they also get a lot of Nobel Prize winners. It doesn't mean that if you start eating chocolate, you're going to get a Nobel Prize, right? Most of the academics at uni have tried it, and it's not worked. And then up the top, we have what we call meta-analyses and systematic reviews. And this is where we pull all the data together, all the studies that have ever been done on a particular area, let's just say fish and heart disease, and we analyse it like it's one enormous study, and we find out what the results are. And those meta-analyses and systematic reviews give us the best evidence. And that is the sort of evidence we want to be able to translate to the public about what they should eat. And at the moment, the Australian dietary guidelines are being revised and updated, and I'm on the committee that's looking at that. And what we do, and what all committees across all countries do, is look for that top level evidence. Okay? So let's hit the ageing process. It's all a little bit sad, but some of the things that happen to us as we age, and they happen continuously, although we do know that ageing occurs in a major way at about around the age of 40 and about around the age of 60. Okay? So what happens? One thing is we have a decreased ability to make nutrients and also to absorb nutrients from our diet. We also have a increased risk of chronic diseases like heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure as we age. And this is referred to inflammaging, where we have inflammation combining with the ageing process. Third thing that happens is sarcopenia. Who's ever heard of sarcopenia? Pop your hand up. A few, yeah, excellent. So sarcopenia is where our muscle mass starts to decline. And it starts declining at about the age of 40. And each year, if we don't keep doing resistance exercise, the amount of muscle mass will decrease. So highlighting how important exercise is as well. our genes begin to damage. So we have our genes and they start to unravel. And they unravel because the little protectors at the end of our genes called telomeres start to wear down. It's a bit like the plastic coverings on your shoelaces. Once they start to break down, the shoelace unravels. It's exactly the same thing that happens with your DNA. We also get hormonal changes, particularly with women, which impacts many health outcomes. And this is the really bad one, our nutritional requirements increase, but we need to eat less energy. So your slice of birthday cake every year needs to get smaller and smaller. So, nutrition. Do we look at nutrients? Do we look at foods? Do we look at food patterns? Nutritional science originally was what we called reductionist nutrition. So we isolated a disease and we found out what nutrient was responsible for it, and we said you need to eat more of this. For example, we discovered vitamin C. We said you needed to eat more oranges and lemons so that you don't get scurvy. Okay? But now we've moved more to dietary patterns, because focusing on nutrients makes people just seek one particular type of food or avoid certain types of food, without the recognition that food and dietary patterns contain many nutrients in there, both that we know of and nutrients that we don't know of yet. Okay? So for example, an orange, what's it got in it? Vitamin C. Fibre as well, but vitamin C, is that the only nutrient in there that helps us? No. There's likely to be hundreds of others that we haven't discovered yet. So going to supplements rather than to food is problematic for that reason. And so, initially it was nutrients, we then moved to foods, but then we label foods as good and bad, right? And that's not necessarily the case all the time. We moved to dietary patterns, understanding that certain ways of eating does provide health benefits. And now we're actually recognising that it's not just diet, it's your whole lifestyle. The way you exercise, the way you sleep, the activities you choose to do, stress, all those sorts of things impact on it. And we're going really big here. We know that's what's best for us in our life, in our health, is also best for the planetary health as well. So if you eat more fruit and vegetables, it's good for your body, it's also better for the planet. If you exercise more and rely less on vehicles, it's also better for your body as well as the planet. So nutrition has moved in huge increments over the years. So I talked about the Australian Guide to Healthy Eating, and I'm sure many of you have seen this before. We call it the Australian Dietary Guidelines. It looks like a plate to show you what proportion of foods you should be eating daily based on the proportions on the plate. All the foods on that plate are nutrient dense with relatively little energy in them, or if you like, kilojoules or calories. They're all whole foods, and you can see that it looks for variety and balance across all the groups. People often say to me, what about superfoods? I love superfoods, I'm going to have some kale. But if we look at all those foods on the plate, every one of them is a superfood. Okay? Then we have the foods down the bottom. We have the used as small amounts, which is the oils, and then we have these here, which are causing us a lot of problem. Only sometimes and in small amounts. And in there we've got things like fruit juice, cakes, donuts, alcohol, sausages. So sausages are sometimes food. We've got cream. We've got chips. I just have to remind everyone all the time that either hot chips or chips out of a packet, it's no longer a vegetable, okay? Not a vegetable. And then we've got things like burgers and pizzas and orange juice, even orange juice is on there, okay? So these are all the foods that we must have small amounts of. So it's focusing on minimal intake of processed and ultra-processed foods. So let's talk about ultra-processed food. Let's talk about the bad stuff first and then move on to the good stuff. Who's heard of that term lately, ultra-processed foods? Many of you, yep. And it's receiving a lot of attention both in research and in the media at the moment. So what exactly is an ultra-processed food? An ultra-processed food is defined as a food that has been produced by food industry with the intention of mass production, okay? And also a food that you could not typically make in a standard kitchen. So we've got hot chips up there, we've got chocolate and burgers and, you know, biscuits and lollies. A lot of these things, you can't make that equivalent product at home. But of course, if you made a burger at home with nice bread and your own fillings, that's a different case. But to help you distinguish between them, potato crisps in a packet, okay, you could make that at home. I'm not recommending it. You could thinly slice a potato and fry it 2 or 3 times deep fried in oil, right? And you can make it at home. But we have another chip called Pringles. And Pringles is where the potato has been broken down to a powder. It's then reformulated into a disc, shaped like it is, deep fried. And that is ultra-processed food. Because one of the other distinguishing features of it is that the food matrix or the architecture of the food has been destroyed. Excuse me. And now these have been heavily linked to many chronic diseases. In Australia, we consume anywhere between 40 to 50% of our energy intake from these foods. And so that is huge. It's linked to many, many chronic diseases: diabetes, heart disease, obesity, hypertension, cancer. But it's also been increasingly linked to depression and depressive symptoms. In 2022, a study showed for every 10% increase in kilojoule from these foods, it led to an 11% increased risk of depression, right? And in 2023, if 30% of your total food intake comes from UPF, it leads to a 23% increased risk of depression for people. So quite substantial numbers there. So why is it that this might be the case? For one thing, we know it's got a lot of saturated fat in there, salt and sugar. It's very energy dense, very nutrient poor, so you don't get anything good out of it. As I also said, it modifies the food matrix. And so the way the nutrients interact with your body is different. And the other thing is that it contains a lot of additives. And in particular, things like guar gum and emulsifiers seem to impact on your microbiome. I'm sure you've also all heard of microbiome as well. Microbiome is the good bacteria that lives in your body, that helps to make nutrients for you and helps to keep the bad bacteria down, okay? So, talking about bacteria and the microbiome, you've probably also recently heard that fermented foods are really good for you. Thing is, we've been eating fermented foods for a while. Many of the foods that you're eating are fermented. So things like pickles, yogurt and cheese are fermented food products. So you don't need to go out and get fancy new fermented products to get them into your diet. But there are others like kombucha, kimchi and sauerkraut that people are starting to introduce in their diet as well. What they do is they provide your body with a good microbiome, and so that leads to better health outcomes. They also help to synthesize neurotransmitters, not the foods, the microbiome. So these are the neurotransmitters, they make you feel better, okay? The important thing with this is to note that you don't need probiotics. You don't need to be going out and buying supplements with bacteria in it. What the research shows us is if people take those, they have a limited range of bacteria in their body. If you get the bacteria from your diet, from these fermented foods, the range and variety of bacteria is greater and hence better for your health. What's important for the bacteria on your body is that you're eating enough fibre, because that is what the bacteria in your body eat. They eat the fibre that you're eating. And fibre comes from anything that comes from a plant. Fruit, vegetables, beans, lentils, legumes, grains, cereals, nuts, seeds. Okay? And without fibre, the microbiome will die. Even if you get the supplements every day, it will have no impact on you because you're not keeping those bacteria alive in your body. The bad bacteria, guess what? Love the saturated fat and the sugar and the salt. Okay? So dietary fibre is essential. At the moment, only 50% of Australians, the average intake of fibre in Australia is 11 grams a day. It should be somewhere between 25 to 30 grams. So there's a huge shortfall. We're also seeing an increased rate of bowel cancer in people under the age of 40, which is quite surprising. And that may be linked to the increased intake of ultra-processed foods as well. So, we've talked about this. I'm one step ahead. Okay, so we've said what the average intake is, and the other thing is vegetables. Only 5% of Australians, 5 out of every 100 people, eat enough serves of veggies. And when I do talks like this, and people often ask me, should I be eating organic? I'm like, don't worry about the organic, just eat vegetables. And organic vegetables are important. It's important to look after the environment. I'm not denying that they're not good or they're not healthy, okay? But they price a lot of people out of vegetables because they are more expensive. It's more important that you eat 5 vegetables than you eat organic vegetables, okay? So, protein food, that's another thing that's made the media a lot. Everyone's suddenly worried about their protein intake. Oh, we need more protein, especially as we get older. Yes, we do need more protein as we get older. Over about the age of 70 is when our needs start to increase. So, they do increase as we get older, but 99% of healthy Australians eat more than enough protein. The most important thing is maintaining resistance exercise to maintain your muscle. You don't make muscle by eating protein. You make muscle by exercising. Exercise is king, protein is queen. Together, we have a kingdom. Okay? What the advice is to put protein in each of your meals. Something for breakfast, something for lunch, and something for dinner. It's important for many reasons, but also improves satiety, so it makes you feel fuller, which is great. As we said, distribute the protein and eat good quality protein. Include vegetable and meat sources, but not the ultra-processed meats, which we know is going to be bad for your health. Okay, fish and omega-3 fats. Everyone heard about this? Yep. So what do? Well, and what is it about them? Fish and fish oil contain 2 omega-3 fatty acids that we call EPA and DHA. You often hear about a vegan source of omega-3 fats, which is ALA, and that's found in flaxseed oil and green leafy vegetables and walnuts. They're important for your brain. They change the fluidity in your brain cells because they're more liquid at 37 degrees, which is your body temperature, so it allows neurotransmitters and messages to get through your brain quicker, so it improves cognition. It reduces inflammation and so makes it beneficial for diseases that have an inflammatory basis. However, in terms of fish versus fish oil, fish is best for heart disease, dementia and rheumatoid arthritis. Fish oil only seems to work for rheumatoid arthritis because presumably there is something in fish that is also beneficial for heart disease and dementia. Okay? A word of warning for vegans. We have an interesting situation with these fats. ALA, the one in flaxseed oil, gets converted in your body to EPA and DHA. EPA is the fat we normally associate with inflammation. DHA is normally the fat we see in the brain. For women that eat ALA, they can convert it to EPA and DHA, but very slowly. It's a very slow process. You're going to get more by having fish. On the other hand, for men, they convert it to EPA slowly, but they don't convert it to DHA. Because men never have to make a brain again in their life. It's an evolutionary thing, okay? So for vegan men, they really do need to consider finding a source of DHA, and it could be through using algae sources of it. Okay, sounds like we're back in kindy. Eat a rainbow of plant foods every day. Every colour represents a different nutrient. We don't know them all yet. Doesn't matter. What we do know is that the more variety you have, the more colours you have, the better off you're going to be. There's recommendations that we should be eating at least 30 different plant foods a week. That's from breads, grains, cereals, seeds, nuts, fruit and veg. Don't forget the herbs and spices. They also provide a lot of nutritional benefit. They're very rich in antioxidants. Use seasonal fruit and vegetables. Include tinned, dried and frozen. They're just as healthy. Frozen vegetables can actually have higher levels of nutrients in them because they're frozen at harvest. Okay? Soups, stews, casseroles, stir fries, all of those. Mix it up. Get as many different things in there as you can. And don't forget lentils, beans and nuts. They're critical in the diet because they also provide lots of protein. One group, the red and purple veggies and fruit, contain anthocyanins. So purple, red and blue. And anthocyanins have been shown to be incredibly important for improving your cognitive ability and being able to think through what you need to do in the day and think through problems. If you're tempted to drink juices from the supermarket, that isn't going to be as efficient because once the antioxidants are released out of their structure of their fruit, their level drops quite significantly. So you're better off having the fruit or juicing it immediately. Okay, I often get asked about other diets. Maybe I should have saved this, but we're going to go for it. Keto, high protein, low carb, all the same. They are problematic because they are low in carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are found in fruit, vegetables, breads, cereals and grains. We've just talked about how important they are for fibre, but they also give you a whole lot of other nutrients. Iron, zinc, protein, B group vitamins, okay? When a diet tells you to eliminate a whole food group, that's a warning sign. It's problematic, okay? These diets work because when you change to a low carbohydrate diet, you're using up your stores of glycogen in your body, right? And glycogen is what's then converted to glucose for you to be able to do work. When you break down glycogen to glucose, the glycogen loses 2 molecules of water. And roughly we have about 5,000 kilojoules worth of glycogen in our body, and so we lose a lot of water when we use up our glycogen stores, and that is the weight loss that people see at the beginning. Okay. Detox diets. If you need a detox diet, you need a liver transplant. As simple as that, okay? They do not work, they eliminate a whole lot of food groups, they are problematic, and particularly if you are on medications. Because the medications you're given are set to be consumed with a certain amount of energy coming in from food every day. And if you're not eating and you're taking meds, those meds are going to start working differently in your body. The DASH diet is a dietary approach to stopping hypertension, very similar to the Australian dietary guidelines, high in plant foods. The MIND diet, which is for reducing dementia, once again, very high in fruit and vegetables, very similar to the Australian dietary guidelines. The anti-inflammatory diet, have you heard of this one? Once again, same, very high in fruits and vegetables, fish, nuts, seeds, and using extra virgin olive oil. Okay, very similar. And then maybe my favourite one, the Mediterranean diet. Once again, very similar to all of those. Those last 4 diets all have the same components of being very rich in plant foods and very low in animal foods. It doesn't eliminate them, but low. And the dairy foods that are consumed are typically fermented, like yogurt and cheese. So let's have a look at the Mediterranean diet a little bit more closely, because I do a lot of research on this, so I do have an interest. This is what the pyramid looks like, and you can see up the top is sweets, which is not surprising, but then we have red meat, and it says for it not to be consumed, well, to consume less than twice a week, which is considerably low. But if you actually talk to people of that generation of when the Mediterranean diet was put together, they only ate red meat once or twice a year, okay? And that was the diet that was ascribed to best health. And we also have the dairy, nuts, fruit, veg. And then we can see down the bottom here, they're also talking about regular physical activity, adequate rest, and conviviality in mealtime and eating with friends. So the benefits of the Mediterranean diet: it reduces heart disease, metabolic diseases like diabetes, it improves cognition, it improves mental health, improves muscle mass, and it reduces the risk of cancer without people needing to lose weight. So the benefits are seen without weight loss. And it's promoted for chronic disease prevention and treatment, as well as for its sustainability principles. We did a recent study looking at depression and anxiety in older Australians, and we found that specific food groups within the Mediterranean diet were best linked with fewer symptoms. And that was sugar-sweetened drinks, low intake of sugar-sweetened drinks, and high intake of nuts, vegetables, and fruit. And this is a more comprehensive overview of it. We won't go through it all, but what I do want to point out is the use of olive oil. It's extra virgin olive oil because that contains more anti-inflammatory properties in it. But you can see here, the recommendation is 80 mils a day, which is a lot. But that's the only source of fat in the diet. And the other thing to highlight is the dairy is mostly fermented dairy, yogurt and cheese, okay? And the meats and from sheep or goat's milk. When you ferment a dairy product, the fermented fatty acids are more healthy for the body. Okay, so I think we've covered this. High in plant foods, low in red meat. Yep, we've covered that. What is it about it? It means the diet's high in fibre, it's very nutrient dense, has fermented bioactives in there from the yogurt and the cheese, high in antioxidant, which is protective for many chronic diseases, moderately high in omega-3 fats, those that are in fish and fish oil, low in sugar, trans fats, saturated fats and salts. The food matrix is retained. It's also low in something we call AGEs, and this is AGEs, which is advanced glycation endpoints. And these chemicals bind to bits of your body to make your body age quicker, okay? So how to adhere to the Med diet? Reduce consumption of processed foods is my number one tip. If you get rid of those, then you have to replace it with whole food. Avoid supplements. Only take it if you've been directed under medical conditions with a blood test. Increase fruit and veg. Eat fruit as a snack. Have a rainbow of fruit and veg. Reduce your meat intake. Promote meat-free days, at least 2 a week. Replace the meat that you have taken out with vegetables, lentils and beans, and replace red meat with fish, and use olive oil when you can, preferably extra virgin. So the word diet comes from the Greek word dieta, which has got nothing to do with eating or not eating food. It actually means the way you choose to live your life. But somehow, the meaning's completely changed in English. And so there's other aspects of the Mediterranean lifestyle that are also important for health. Purposeful exercise outdoors. Growing and harvesting your own food, cooking and preparing traditional food together, eating together, alcohol, we're not promoting it, but if you do, always with food, and sleep and siesta is important. Exercise has to be purposeful, preferably outdoor, break up your sitting time so you're not stationary for too long. We talk about steps. Is it 10,000? Is it 8,000? Whatever it is, do more, okay? Try to include resistance and cardio exercise, so weight walking home from the shops with your groceries. And then we talk about SMART goals, but in the interest of time, I'll just skip that. Social connectivity is also critical. So most of, in the Mediterranean regions, they lived in little villages and there was big social connectivity. So you need to find your tribe. Is it work? Is it hobby? Is it community groups? Your family? Your neighbourhood? If none of those are available, consider volunteering. We know that social connectivity is really important for your health. And food always brings people together. Okay, food and food traditions. Now, this is, we talked earlier about cooking together, passing down recipes. This is my son when he was young. And just to show, yes, I'm a dietitian, but I still cook cakes. And I decorate them with lots and lots of sugar on it, right? But that's a special occasion thing. It was Dorothy Day that said, food for the body is not enough. There must be food for the soul as well. And there are certain foods in your own families that bring up certain memories and traditions, and they're important. They also bring families together. So don't forget that this isn't about you've got to cut that all out. You still need that. You still need that connection with your family, and you still need to be able to enjoy the good times with good food. But it doesn't have to be all, in this case, crappy food like that, right? Have a little bit of that, but enjoy the good. And a lot of those foods that we've talked about are yummy and delicious. So that's it for me. Are we going to do Q&A now? Yeah.
Thank you very much, Evangeline. And I think we will take some audience questions. So if you have a question for Evangeline today, please raise your hand, and Amanda and Sarah have roving microphones too, and they'll make their way up to you.
Hi. You mentioned something about weight loss and that it wasn't necessary if you're on the Mediterranean diet. Did you mean that you can be overweight and healthy if you eat the Mediterranean diet? Or are you suggesting that if you do follow the Mediterranean diet, you won't be overweight?
No.
Can you just talk about that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Neither of those. When we do nutrition studies, we normally see improvements in health as people lose weight. These improvements we see when people adhere to the Mediterranean diet in respect to metabolic diseases like diabetes and PCOS and heart disease, they happen without weight loss. So it doesn't mean you shouldn't lose weight, and it doesn't mean you shouldn't be concerned about your weight, but what it does say is it's not a weight-centric diet. We're not saying, look, you need to lose weight to get the benefits. The benefits occur in the Mediterranean diet without weight loss. And that's because of the richness of the nutrients in there and all the antioxidants. Is that cleared it up? Yes. Yeah.
My husband will be happy.
Well, maybe don't tell him the full bit, because, what we do know is that excess weight for some diseases can be problematic, like osteoarthritis, and losing weight there is going to be benefit. But it's just saying, look, we get the benefits without the weight loss with this diet.
Thank you for your input today. My question is about avocados. I'd like to know, firstly, are they a fruit, a nut, or a vegetable? And where do they sit in their goodness for our health?
And you know what? Like every good lecturer, I'm going to make you go and find out that answer. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter where we place it in terms of nutritional benefits. Avocados are healthy. They contain monounsaturated fats in them. They contain a lot of antioxidants in them as well. So it is a good addition into your diet. If you're like me, I love avocados, so you tend to go a little bit crazy when you get one, although they're so pricey now. So just be mindful of how much of it you're consuming, and that it's about 70% fat. But it makes an ideal replacement as a sandwich spread as well, or in salads. So do enjoy them. And then next year we'll find out what you found out.
Good afternoon. Gluten-free diets, the effect of wheat on people's bowels, I suppose. Where does all that fit into into the diet that you've promoted today?
Yeah, look, gluten is a component, it's a protein that's found in wheat that causes problems for a small percentage of the population who've got celiac disease, and they have to eat none of it, and they also have to have separate equipment in the kitchen because even the tiniest amount in their diet will cause a problem. So separate toasters, separate chopping boards, separate knives, even if they've been cleaned. Okay, really critical. For the general population, gluten isn't problematic. There's reports of some people reporting sensitivities to it. That might be more of a FODMAPs problem. What we do know is that people that follow a gluten-free diet and do not have celiac do have an increased risk of diabetes. Okay, so it's not the sort of thing to do. A, it's very expensive. B, the bread doesn't taste very good. And why would you miss out on pizza? But it's also problematic in other ways. Yeah.
Hello, just trying to pull up my question. Now, with regards to when we're having a plant-based diet or days of a plant-based diet, would be interested to hear your take on the low white cell counts which emerge as inflammation levels decrease on this diet.
Low white cell counts. I don't know that research and I'd have to look at it specifically, but white cell counts fluctuate. There's a normal range. There's not one perfect level. And if the white cell counts drop during plant food-based diets, it may be a reflection of the anti-inflammatory nature of that plant-based diet.
Hello, I've actually got two questions. The first is, in a 70-year-old man who's a vegan, where should he get the DHA from? And the other thing is, what's the verdict about coconut oil? Is that good or bad?
Okay, so with vegan men, as we said, having flaxseed oil, you don't get it, so you're looking at algae sources. And once again, this is a decision that has to be made about are they willing to consume that. In some cases, when we talk to people, they realise the importance of the DHA for their health. So, for example, if they've got arthritis and they're balancing up, depending on why they're vegan, right? That, well, if I don't have DHA and I need more medical treatment, what's the impact of that on the environment? So there's some ethical, decision making that has to be made. Coconut oil is a saturated fat. There was quite a bit of interest in it about it being protective for, I think, Alzheimer's or dementia at one stage, but there was no good studies to show that. They often cite that, communities that use coconut oil in their cooking are healthier. Yes, but have you seen what they have to do to get the coconuts? Okay, so it's once again where you're doing that reductionist approach to just that food. If you have coconut oil and you enjoy it in curries, by all means use it for specific food preparations. But it shouldn't be your main oil because it is a saturated fat and it's not high in antioxidants like avocado oil and olive oil and and another good monounsaturated fat oil, and it'll come to me.
Thank you for the presentation. And we have two questions. One, if we compare the fish, fresh fish or frozen fish, in terms of the benefits in the health, there is any difference?
So sorry, fresh fish to?
Frozen fish.
Frozen fish, exactly the same. Okay. When you freeze a food, it stops everything breaking down. So long as you use it within the 2 or 3 months that they recommend, it will be fine.
Thank you.
And even canned fish is fine. Canned fish is often cheaper and a great way to get your fish intake in. Canned salmon, tuna, sardines. Wow, they're coming everywhere.
Okay, second question. You say, eat good protein. Can you give me examples of bad protein?
Yep, processed meats. Sausages, salami, hams, all of those foods have been linked to an increased risk of bowel cancer.
I'm very interested in the role of things like pasta and bread. I've lived in Italy and they eat a lot of pasta and bread there, and so I'm interested in that in relation...
I can't see the speaker. Oh, there's, sorry.
I'm interested in that in relation to the Mediterranean diet.
Look, often we romanticize how much pasta and bread they did consume. So when we looked at the Mediterranean diet, it's about 6 to 8 serves a day, and a serve being a slice of bread. So yes, they do eat it. They're not scared of it. It's probably what is most remarkable about it. No good Italian would be scared of pasta or bread. So long as you try to make it more whole grain, so, you know, you might be having white pasta, but try to get whole grain bread in or wholemeal bread. That's going to give you more fibre and more antioxidants.
Hello, thank you for your talk. I have a question about olive oil and just oils in general and about flashpoints. So from what I've read, olive oil is healthy as long as you have it raw, but once you cook it, it becomes high in saturated fats.
Yes.
So if that's the case, what oil is the safest for frying and heating?
Okay, 2 things. It's not the case. The fat does not convert to saturated fats. The second is you shouldn't be deep frying. I'm cruel, aren't I? Okay, so often people talk about smoking point with olive oil. That is just a physical characteristic of the oil about when it starts to smoke. It has never ever been related to any health outcome. Plus, with the level of antioxidants in olive oil, compared to other types of oils, it is more protective when you do heat it.
A question on timing and when we eat. I've always been told eat a big breakfast, a medium lunch and a small dinner, and then also snacking. And also I recall Michael Mosley talked about fasting, 5 and 2. Could you just expand on timing, please?
Look, that's a big area. I could do a whole lecture on that. So it's intermittent fasting. So it's when you avoid food for a certain length of time. And there's lots of different ones. There's, 12 and 12 and 16 and 8. You've got to get your maths right for this, don't I? 14 and 10, where there's a period of time where you don't eat to allow your body to go into a fasting state, where things like insulin levels drop and it reduces or it improves your insulin sensitivity. And that is correct. When it comes to weight loss, whether someone uses intermittent fasting, and there's also the 2 and 5, like 2 days of fasting, 5 days of normal eating. When it comes to weight loss, people see no difference whether you use intermittent fasting principles or whether you reduce your daily intake across the day. So people can pick what suits them. So for some people, they find it hard to restrict their intake, so they prefer that idea of saying, okay, I've got this rule, I only eat between 8 and 8, and that's it. And that's a good rule. It puts boundaries on you. You might prefer that let's reduce intake on 2 days, but if you're on medications, once again, those medications will act differently, okay? And it's actually good to have that period where you are in a fasted state. So if people are interested in it, the first thing I often suggest is avoid snacking. See if you can just have breakfast, lunch and dinner, okay? For most of the time. And then maybe if you go, well, I like the idea of having a rule that 8 o'clock night, that's it, the kitchen closes. And that helps to control. So people do use it in a way to control their eating. Does that help? Yeah. Oh, there's a question down here as well. Yep.
Yeah, thank you for your time today. So my boss, Chemist Warehouse, he's made $1 billion out of supplements.
Oh.
My question with the world, the way it is now, no one has a backyard to grow foods and veg anymore. Is the supplements realistic to your health?
No.
Thank you.
Okay, let me explain. So supplements are highly, highly marketed. They make you feel like your diet's inadequate and that you better have it just in case, right? And that's why most people have it. But it is expensive. When I started in dietetics all those years ago, we often talked about it makes your wee expensive because basically what you don't need gets flushed out, right? More evidence has come in recently to show that particularly when people take antioxidants as supplements, it actually increases their risk of death. Yeah. And if you look at the National Heart Foundation and the Cancer Council, they actually say, do not take supplements, okay? If you need something, and one of the more common supplements that people need is iron, you will go to your doctor, find out your iron levels are low, and then start treatment. Do not self-diagnose. I've seen enough cases where people do self-diagnose, either with going on a gluten-free diet or taking supplements or whatever, and then down the track, it's actually been something more sinister that their symptoms have represented, okay? Plus, you can't out-supplement a bad diet, right? Just because you take a multivitamin and you have, I'm not saying you, but you eat donuts and hamburgers and lollies, it doesn't make your diet healthy because all the supplement can put back in is what we know about. Remember, we don't know everything about what's in our food yet. What we definitely know from the science is that people that eat food are healthier, right? Never has a study shown that when healthy people consume supplements, they become even healthier. Never.
I'm going to ask you to make my day.
Sure. How much will you pay me?
Tell me that cheddar cheese is not ultra-processed.
Which one?
Cheddar cheese.
Cheddar cheese. No, if you buy cheddar cheese, it's not. It's the one in the plastic, you know, I don't want to name any brand names, but you know, and it says processed cheese on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I have read that hard cheese qualifies.
Well, it's a processed food because processes are applied to it. It's not like an apple, which you pick and there's no processing in that to get it to you. But it's not an ultra-processed food. And we know because it's a fermented food that it's a little bit healthier for you.
Okay, so
But once again, I'm not going to completely make your day. You've got to watch quantities because we can all overeat on the cheese.
I hear as we get older, we start the journey towards osteoporosis. And I'm on that early stage myself. And I drink lots of milk and eat lots of cheese and stuff. So how much calcium do we need? And what's the best way to get the calcium to stop our bones becoming fragile and breaking our hips?
Okay, so you said osteoarthritis. Did you mean osteoporosis?
Oh, sorry, I meant osteoporosis.
Okay,
yeah, sorry.
osteoporosis. So depending on the age at which you get it, sadly in old age, it's very hard to reverse it. And so hopefully you're seeing your doctor and there's some treatment plan involved. Yep. Nevertheless, the bones act as the reservoir for the calcium. Calcium is important in your body because it allows muscles to move. And so when your blood calcium levels go low, it grabs the calcium from your bone and pulls it into your blood. So you should be having about, so that you're not pulling out any more calcium from your bones, about 3 serves of dairy a day. And a dairy is 1 cup of milk, 30 to 40 grams of cheese, or 200 grams of yogurt.
Just so you know, folks, this is the last question for Evangeline.
It's a lady.
One of the things I was just going to mention is if people take vitamin C as a supplement, it's not meant to be taken 2 hours either side of medications. And so there's a few problems with that, and also with people getting infusions now of vitamins. They think they're making themselves healthier, and actually, like you said, it's increasing their cancer risk. So,
So the best way to have vitamin C is in your fruit. It's delicious and you get a whole heap of other nutrients. Plus you get the fibre that apparently none of us are meeting.
All right, I'm afraid that brings us to the end of today's seminar. I'm sorry for anyone we didn't get to, but I would just like to say a huge thank you to Dr Evangeline Mantzioris for that wonderful presentation. And I think we included red wine as something that we can have in our diet, so please accept this gift from us. Thank you. Token of appreciation. And as somebody who has recently grown a new brain, I'll definitely be adding some fish to my diet this week. But,
very clever lady you are.
Oh, there we go. So I just want to say thank you to everyone for coming to today's Successful Ageing Seminar. As always, a recording of the presentation will be available on our website in the coming weeks. On behalf of UniSA's advancement team, I'd like to thank you all for your continued support of the Successful Ageing events. We aim to have our next one in mid-June, so keep an eye on your emails for notification of that next event. And yeah, have a lovely afternoon, and thank you all so much for joining us, and safe home.